Hey guys, it's what it is with Mikey. So, a couple things I want to go over today. Number one, I was thinking about it, comment I made, and the response I got from somebody, one of my loyal followers the other day, which is where I stated in a video that maybe people just want to watch boring mental illness videos. Now, I need to clarify that. The time what I was meaning by that was my mental illness videos aren't exactly exotic. I mean, I sit on a couch in my study. I don't have any special effects. I don't have any cool lighting or background scenery. It's just me and my ugly mug staring you in the face, telling you what I think about mental illness. That's what I meant about boring. Not that the subject of mental illness is boring, because to be honest, I find it one of the most fascinating things in the world. I also think that it is very understudied. And I just have never been able to figure out why, because I think mental illness study would unlock so many freaking things in our scientific world. It would be the 8th or 9th wonder of the world or whatever. The first one that's not a physical artifact. See, it's one of the things that drives me most nuts about our world, the stigma of mental illness, how everybody, or I should say a lot of people, like to look down on us instead of figuring out what we could do to unlock the keys to the universe, the superhuman powers, as I discussed, that we may have that could help with diseases and cures of diseases, all kinds of things I think could be unlocked if we could unlock the mentally ill mind. So having said that, today's topic was suggested to me in a comment from yesterday's video, or the day before, probably the day before actually. And what it was about was, you guys for one have heard me talking about people disappearing on me all the freaking time. So I thought I was locking that one away, putting it in the closet, but I gotta pull it back out at least one more time. You see, this comment was, what is it with the mentally ill and abandonment issues that we all seem to have? Very interesting thought. Why do mentally ill people have abandonment issues is the topic of the day. Please feel free to comment. I really hope you will get involved in the discussion. Let's get this sucker out there and talk about it. So when we break down abandonment, it's kind of hard for me to give examples of, well, this guy abandoned this guy and that guy abandoned that guy and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to give you my examples and what happened to me, and then made a general consensus at the end. And I have not planned this video. I'm shooting from the hip because that's the way I do it best. So I hope you can deal with some backing up and re-saying things, or moments of silence. It's where Mikey's trying to piece together what he wants to say on a particular topic. And I think today's is very important because it seems to rule my life. So let's start back in the day. Let's go back to my biggest abandonment issues that I can think of. You see, I didn't grow up today. Obviously, I'm an old dude. I didn't grow up with two parents out of the house. When I was growing up, My mom was home almost all the time till I was about 18, and then she went off to work. But my dad was also home a lot of the time because he was usually self-employed. So I had the rare jewel of having both parents home a lot of the time. So my abandonment issues really didn't come out of the family sense of things till later, except for I've been thinking about one possibility. You see, I think when we think about abandonment issues, this isn't necessarily, say, a father or mother or brother or sister disappearing on you and leaving you in a physical sense. Hasta la vista, I moved to Las Vegas, I'm gonna hit a big, I'll see y'all down the road. I think abandonment can be just as much in the sense of somebody dying, which is not a voluntary abandonment. I think that's very important to think about because in my life, I had several people die that in essence abandoned me involuntarily, if you will. So my first one came with my grandma, my mom's mom. And this was a death abandonment at a young age. See, me and my grandma had a special bond. I would do things for her I wouldn't do for anybody else. I would watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer if I was sitting in Grandma's lap. But I remember she even was the first one to get me to try two-skiing behind that dang boat. I was scared to death because, you see, I think I've had anxiety issues my entire life as I look back on things. So I was a little anxious, but I went back for Grandma because Grandma got in the water with me and held me as I tried to navigate those darn two skis. And when I'd fall after 10 feet, I knew Grandma was paddling out there to me to hold me again and keep me secure until the next time I tried. I remember at our local amusement park, I had a ride there called Dracula's Castle that I was scared to death of because Dracula was sitting up in that frickin' window and he was saying some pretty mean and scary things. So I was too afraid. Everybody tried to get me to go in there, but I never would till I was about 12 years old. I went in with my grandma when she came to town. She said, "Mike, will you go with me if I go with you?" And I said, "Of course I will, Grandma. I love you so much." And so I went with Grandma, and as we went through, I said, "You know, Grandma, this really isn't all that scary. But I know I could do it because you were there." Well, guys, a couple of years later, my grandma developed cancer. Must have been, I don't really recall, but must have been stage 4 when they found it because she died a couple months later. I was only about 14. This was my first experience with abandonment in a hurtful scale. After Grandma came abandonment from friends. So I had a lot of friends growing up. I knew a lot of kids in the neighborhood. I knew a lot of kids in the church. I knew a lot of kids at school. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't really have a best friend, if that makes sense. So one day, across the street, this new kid moves into the neighborhood with his family. It was a mom, dad, 3 girls and a boy. And I thought, maybe here's my shot. So I tried talking to him, but he didn't really want to talk to me at first. He started playing with my arch nemesis from down the road, the kid I freaking wanted to punch on a daily basis. I got really pissed. The weirdest thing about how me and the kid across the street named Nate, the weirdest thing about how we became best buddies is that our bestest friendship started off with a big rumble. That's right, I went over to his house one time. I started duking it out with him. He started fighting back. We were kicking and clawing and scratching, punching and name calling and all that crap. Somehow out of that, a best friendship formed. Now, as some of you will know, I've done a lot of videos on this. Me and this guy became like blood brothers. We were so close. We were never apart. We used to ride our frickin' bikes around the neighborhood naked together. I mean, we were inseparable. But there's a little problemo I didn't know about. You see, his dad was on the run from the law. He was a fugitive. The house they were living in was a rental house. They were there for many years, though. It was a good 4 or 5 years. So as our friendship grew, his dad's problems started catching up with him. He had a little problem with thievery. He sold pianos, and he liked to skim a little off the top wherever he went. I didn't know a thing about this, but apparently, after 4 or 5 years, the cops were onto him, and it was time to roll. I didn't know why they were moving when it happened. All I knew was my best friend, my brother, was moving away. I remember the day the U-Haul came and they left. I hugged him and we cried like little babies for freaking hours and hours. But right before this happened, or no, this is after, okay, scratch that. I told you I have to go back and forth on all this. So we were bawling. He moved up to Boise, Idaho. Then he was there for a little while till the heat came on. Then they moved back home to Delaware, and that's where he is now. But you see, he used to come back. His grandma lived in Salt Lake, so he would come back and stay with her, and then he would bring the bus to our house, and he did this for several years after. Until one year when we were up at Hades Lake. Old Pine View, actually, that I like to call Hades Lake. It's so friggin' hot up there. Anyway, we're on the boat. I never forget it. Solid gold memory in my head. We're sitting on the boat, and I got a feeling. These feelings I freaking get, I hate when I get them. But they always bring the same news. I looked up at him and I said, I'm never going to see you again. Just out of the blue. And he'd been coming back for years and years and years. There was no reason to think he wouldn't be back again in the fall, like he did every other year. But I got a feeling. I said, I'm never going to see you again. He said, oh, you're freaking nuts. Of course I'm going to be back in a couple months. I said, no, you're not. He said, you'll see. Okay, guys. Not only did I never see him again, he stopped writing me. He all up and disappeared. Broke my heart. For years and years and years, up in fact until a couple years ago, and this is 30 years later, I've been trying to contact him. I know where he lives. I know his address. I know his phone number. I tried contacting him through family, cousins, first cousins, and aunts. They would always say, oh yeah, Mikey, I'll get you the information. They never did. That one still hurts to this day. It's the biggest hole in my heart, besides my dad. So there's my first major abandonment. So that was when I was in about sophomore in high school. Senior year of high school, kid moves down the road from me, from New Jersey. He's living out here with family. So I don't know how long he's going to be here, but I think it's going to be a while. We become locker partners. We are good buddies now. Christmas vacation time comes, senior year, I got that same damn feeling. I looked at him. We were at our locker one day, I'll never forget. I said, I'm never going to see you again. He said, oh, dude, I'm just going home for Christmas. I'll be back a couple weeks. I said, you're not coming back. I'm never going to see you again. Guess what? Never saw him again. Never got a letter, a call, nothing. He up and disappeared. So, moving on, my best friend, after the end of high school, we roomed together at college. He is, and this guy was my friend throughout high school. We weren't best friends till toward the end of high school. So after high school, we go our separate ways for a while, but we hooked back up to go to college. So we became such best buddies. He became one of the guys in my line, the second man in line for my wedding. That's how close we were. So I got married, went off, started doing my thing. We were even at the same school. We lived right next to each other the next entire school year of college. But of course I was newly married, so it's getting to know my wife and all that kind of thing better. But anyway, a couple years later, after that, I don't hear from him for a couple years, but it's all good. I understand. So he calls me up out of the blue one day and says, Mikey, I'm getting married on June 5th. Something like that. I want you to come to the reception. Or was it the wedding? Did he want me? I think he wanted me to come to the wedding, actually. Not be in his line, but come to the wedding. So I'm like, okay, guys, that night I had my wife's sister's high school graduation and my graduation from a 4-year school. So it was kind of a big day on my side of things. I told him I couldn't come. So my dad got on the phone and said, he just doesn't want to come. He could be there, but he just doesn't want to go. So I grabbed the phone from my dad. I said, Dad, shut the hell up. So I took the phone and said, he's full of them. He said, bye. Never heard from him again for years. One of the things I still have to bring up to my dad one of these days. So, and that will take a while because of my story after the next story. So, that guy's gone. So, I need a new best friend. Besides a wife, obviously. So my biggest brother, my oldest brother, becomes my best friend. We're hanging out, we're doing things together, it's a good old time. He gets married and moves to frickin' Missouri. My best friend's gone again. And we were pretty close until a couple of years ago. He's been gone for quite a while. Now there's not really a whole lot there anymore. So after that, the next traumatic abandonment occurs. My dad dies at 59. You see, after my brother left, me and my dad became best homies. I didn't live that far away. We hung out all the time. We used to shoot the bull and talk the turkey, and it got serious. I remember him telling me one time he didn't care if he's alive or not anymore. See, my dad was undiagnosed bipolar, in my opinion. But we were eating Christmas dinner a couple days before the new millennium. Everything's good. Next morning, I get a call from my mom. Dad's sick. He has to go in the hospital. I spent the next 3 weeks in hell waiting for the call that my dad was gone. 3 weeks later, I get the call. Mikey, come down to the hospital. we need to make a decision on your dad. So we go down and they pull the plug as he gasps and moans and kicks and groans for a few minutes before he gives up the ghost. Abandoned again. So this time I'm starting to have kids. I had a daughter, but it was that next 9 months later. And if you can understand the significance of that, Zachy comes along. Me and Zachy, as you know, have always had a special best buddy type bond. It's just always been there. I love all my kids equally, but that bond has just been amazingly tight. And you all know what that's about. But it's interesting because I feel like a part of my dad went into Zachy, because Zachy, life was brought from death, if you understand. My dad died January 8, 2000. Zachy comes along mid-September. So I feel like I was granted a gift. So I trucked along all these years. I've made a lot of friends since high school and all that. Had a lot of jobs, known a lot of people. Had some abandonment issues here and there, but I didn't have the worst ones since my dad until I got on here. And I have struggled immensely with abandonment issues. And yes, bringing it all into the scope of things, I believe it's from my mental illness. See, because of all the abandonment and the fear of abandonment from my past, whenever somebody doesn't show up their face on here for a while, I feel abandoned. And is it rational? Is it irrational? In my mind, it's real. I break down why it's real, why it's not. In the end, I understand people have a life out there, and I don't really know them in a best friend sense like Nate. I don't hang out and give him hugs and cry when need be and all that, but I have always tried to be as loyal as possible to my friends on social media. But I have been hurt so many times, but I've also felt amazing support and love when I've really needed it. So breaking it down real quick on abandonment for the mentally ill in general, I think a lot of us have very low self-esteem and low self-confidence. I think a lot of us have been kicked around the curbs a few times. I think a lot of us have been made fun of and spat on and called names and mostly misunderstood. And sadly, a lot of this has been from our own families. So I think when we find somebody that we can attach to, and as I like to say, my best friends on social media have shared my pain. I think we're always worried about abandonment in the back of our minds because of all of our trauma. We're worried that another good thing is going to be taken away from us. Another thing that we love is going to disappear. And if that can't tie into Halloween, I don't know what does. And one of these days soon, I'm going to do a video on why mentally ill people tend to be so attracted to the theme of Halloween. And I think it has something to do with pain. But we've been going so long today. Any of y'all that have carried on to the end, God bless you. I will talk to y'all next time. And please, as I said, leave comments, like, share, sub, whatever you got to do. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.